Jennifer, has anyone said to you yet today that you're amazing?
Repeat that?
Has anyone said to you yet today that you're amazing?
Oh, not yet. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
If you're saying it.
If not, I will. You are amazing.
Oh, thank you.
And so is your website.
Oh, that's nice to hear. Thank you very much. Been doing a little bit of updates on that, so glad to hear that it's coming together. Hey, Garrett.
How are you?
Very
Wow,
good, thanks. Yeah, how are you?
I am great.
Hey, Carl.
Gary,
Hey, Carl.
You know, I have to tell you, Garrett,
Mm-hmm.
all week long, I look forward to this.
Great.
I really do, you know, coming together with intelligent, well-informed people on interesting topics and hearing the conversation and sometimes contributing the conversation. It's a high point during my week.
I'm really glad to hear you say that. You know, this actually started from, I used to go, well, it actually really started from when I was in college. I started a philosophy discussion group, but then I came back reunited with the philosophy discussion group idea, you know, almost 15 years later, in Connecticut. I went to Socrates Cafe groups in Stamford. I was in Danbury at the time, and I would drive, you know, 40 minutes or an hour. And it was a really tough part of like my life. And it was the one thing that I looked forward to every month is like going and having these like good intellectual conversations with a group of people. And I ended up becoming friends with the organizer and then co-organizing with her. And then she ended up becoming my realtor, bought me a great rental property. And well, I bought the rental property, but she introduced me to it. And then I ended up going to New York and taking over Socrates Cafe in New York and doing it, you know, hosting it myself for, you know, 5 or 10 years. And then that is what was kind of the beginning of, like I said, I want to take Socrates Cafe to the next level. And I want to make it something that is institutional, where the ideas, you know, percolate and where we like have a long-term goal and vision, not just intellectual conversation for the sake of it, but with an end in mind. And so with the FTI, the end in mind is increasing happiness and decreasing harm in the world, and sort of enlisting people to do that. And, you know, these events on Tuesday are more casual, but our membership, you know, is more not formal, I wouldn't say, Michael, right? But more like directed in terms of like, we really help each other like in life. And we have like peer mentoring going on between members. And Jennifer, I think you're newer, but yeah, I think you can probably attest to that. So you know, I think we're getting closer to what I had envisioned, and, you know, we keep evolving and we keep learning from what people's feedback is. And I'm just trying to make the organization something that's useful to people.
Well, it is useful, and I definitely look forward to it, and I do feel enriched through it.
Thank you.
yeah, same here.
Yeah, same here. You know, there over the last couple of years, there's this interesting saying: you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. And it sounds like this is a group of people I need to spend a lot of time with.
Well, that's really nice to hear, Charles, and I would love to be one of those 5 people. So if that stuff resonates with you, then make FTI people some of those 5 people, because, you know, that's the first intention of the FTI, is to be the best version of ourselves, to seek truth and to be fair. And if those are your kind of people, you're in the right place. So
Which means you just have to make the FTI meetings every single day of the week.
exactly. Which
we
don't have them every day of the week. Yeah. So we do have them twice a week. We have these on Tuesdays, and then the members ones are on Sundays. So
the Sundays are in person?
No, those are through Zoom. We do sometimes have member meetings in person, but it's only with one separate pod that meets rarely. It's not a consistent pod. But we do have in-person meetings for the FTI in New York that are not, but it's not members. It's just anyone that wants to be a part of the FTI, just like this, but in person, basically. And they're smaller groups. You know, the most we've gotten is 20 something, and usually we're closer to, you know, 4 to 10. So
yeah,
I've been a couple and they're enjoyable, but I live in central Jersey, so getting into Manhattan is not that easy for me.
Yeah, it's a hike.
It's probably easier than me. I'm all the way on the West Coast.
It's a little further of a commute then.
Yeah. I'll just hop on my private jet.
Exactly.
Or at least I'll probably get a private jet after I hear this presentation.
You actually will be able to with enough time. I don't know your age because it does take time for this to work, but it works for everybody. It works
Okay.
for everybody, but it works best with more time because it has to
Right.
do with compound interest.
Got it.
It does work for everybody, and you probably are starting from a higher socioeconomic place than the example that I'm going to give. Although Jagvir is going to start off, and then I'm going to go after him. But anyway, I would love to hear from people as far as where you're connecting from, what interests you in tonight's topic, and anything you want to share from a social perspective. Just a quick overview would be great.
Well, I
You
guess
want
I
me to
could. I'm logging in from Olympia, Washington. I've always been really good with money in the sense of spending less than I always made, and so I've always kind of like. But my problem is I've always been really risk averse, and so I've never really invested in the stock market or anything. I just kind of always put it in the bank or try to find the highest interest rate for CDs. And I've always kind of like deep down, I've always kind of suspected that there's better ways out there. People are smarter than me about that, and so I'm kind of always been curious. But it's never been my main motivation in life. Like I've never been like, oh, I need to make money. I need to make money. It was always like follow my heart, love what I do, and if I get paid, as long as I can pay my bills and live comfortably without suffering, that was good for me. So now kind of have like my retirement, basically. My savings is my retirement, and I'm kind of wondering what's out there that I could do to, not think about it.
Yeah, I can help you with that, Carl. Jagvir and I can help you. Neil, do you want to go next? Thanks for putting your hands up, guys, too. That's a good idea. It keeps us organized. We don't
Hey,
know.
it's Neil. I'm calling in from Philadelphia area, the suburban Philadelphia, not the city. And what's interested me in this discussion is I'm always interested in, shall we say, creative ways to invest. A number of years back, I took a large chunk of my 401k that was in the stock market and rolled it over into an IRA and then bought some real estate with it. So I'm now a real estate investor in place of what had been a stock investor. So it makes me a landlord, but it's an interesting way. But anyway, so I'm interested to see what other options there are besides that. But I guess I'm one of those people that have taken money out of the stock market and used an alternate way of investing.
Cool. Great to hear that, Neil. I did that as well. And I actually kind of wish that I had done what I'm going to teach you guys about tonight because I would have made more money, although my real estate has actually done quite well. But I'll explain to you why I could have done even better. But hindsight is 2020. I just want to teach you guys what I've learned from Jagvir and company. So that said, Kenneth, go ahead.
Hello, everyone. I'm Kenneth from Canada, Calgary. So it's my first time to be here. And the reason I joined is that the title captured my attention. And I want to also apply my philosophy background, although I'm not a philosophy major by profession. I'm an engineer by profession, civil engineer. But I was just inspired by Thales when he applied his philosophical mind to, to make some money when he predicted the season during the time. So I want to combine my social science skills through critical thinking, and although there's no exact science to predict the future, but I believe it will increase my likelihood to decide which or to increase my wealth in the stock market. Thank you.
Great. Would sell them up be an appropriate thing to say to you, Kenneth?
Just Ken or Kenneth. That's okay for me.
Do you speak another language?
Yeah, I'm from the Philippines.
That's why I said salamat.
Oh, salamat. Yeah, you're
Yeah.
welcome.
Okay. I was just trying to peg your accent and I wasn't sure if I was right, so I was being hesitant. So
Right, thank you.
salamat, Kenneth, and kamusta.
Yeah, I'm fine. Thank you.
Glad to hear it. Michael, go ahead.
Okay, my name's Michael Strasberg. I'm a member of the FTI. I enjoy coming to these Tuesday evening meetings. I learn a lot. I don't always participate, but I'm always listening. At the age of 70, I'm not sure how aggressive I want to be with any investments anymore. But I'm just starting Social Security. We're still working 2 days a week. And it's nice to say hello to everybody.
Great. Thanks, Michael. Ginny, how are you? Good to have you here, although I can't see you, so I'll say good to have you here. There we go.
Oh, there.
Now we can hear you.
No, I'm just very excited about this topic. Maybe I'll learn how to become rich. I am not rich at all by any means, so I am really excited.
Cool. I think if you have a reasonable amount of savings, then I can help you get rich faster than anyone else. Without taking a lot of risk, like with very minimal risk is the I'm like I want to balance risk and reward. I want the highest reward for the least risk. And so what I'm going to show you today is hundreds of hours of research, having found what I think is so far my best high return, low risk way of investing. So and we're going to talk about savings too. And Jagbir is going to talk about a bunch of really cool stuff that he's going to kick us off. But let me see if there's anyone else that wants to introduce themselves. And if not, Wilkin, did you mean to be off mute? Did you want to introduce yourself? All right. So does anyone else want to introduce themselves? We have 3 more minutes until we officially have to start, but we could start earlier too. So
Should I repeat what Michael and I were talking about?
yeah, go ahead.
So my name's Charles and I'm in the Corning Painted Post area in upstate Western New York. And really just filed for my Social Security last year because we hit 9.9% inflation and have been through a number of financial planners, asset managers. Many of them have this, we want you to keep what you've got mindset. And I realized that that's not good enough. When we hit 9.9% inflation in January and February of last year, I mean, it was, why do I even have my money in a bank? Kind of thinking came to me. And I just started saying to myself, I've got to do something to improve this situation and see what I can do to outrun it. So I've moved through a number of financial planners and asset managers. I've just made another move. The planner before this one was talking about mirroring what the stock market has done over the last 20 years, which is about somewhere between 10 and 12% growth. And so I said, all right, you can manage my portfolio. The more recent financial analyst has suggested that he believes they can improve on that by about 1% by removing some risk. And then I happened to call one of the largest banks in the world, JP Morgan, and they basically said, well, last year for our clients, when everything was at 9.9% inflation, we were earning between 17 and 20% for our clients. And one of the things that has sort of, you mentioned compounding interest. My dad used to talk about that. So I'm ready to listen to what you have to say. And then the other thing is that people that are about his age, they all have said over and over and over again, you have to tell these financial planners to be aggressive. So that's what brings me here. I find that the more times I talk with more interesting people who have been down these paths before I have. I learned interesting pearls of wisdom and better ways to manage my money. And
Great.
and the fellow in the Philippines, predictive analytics, I love that stuff.
Well, that's what I would call critical thinking, is predictive analytics. It's understanding models of the world and be able to predict what's going to happen. And I will tell you, I think I can beat what the advice that you're getting now by a pretty hefty margin, and actually not increase risk. When you tell investment advisors to go aggressive, they're taking more risk and they may well lose half of your money. And what
Right.
I'm saying, you're going to be just as safe as what you're doing now, but you're going to make a much higher return on investment. And with that said, it's 7:01, so I want to introduce Jagvir. I don't know that I can do Jagvir justice, so I'm going to let him introduce himself a little bit afterwards, but I'm going to try to do the best I can. Jagvir has been my trainer in this organization that, I spent 4 years in insurance, reinsurance, and standardized $29 billion worth of bookings. I thought I knew the industry really well, and Jagvir taught me how little I knew, because there are products that, from a personal perspective, I knew a lot of like big scale. I was at G Insurance Solutions, big scale insurance, reinsurance products that were cool, but this is a product that just really opened a whole new horizon from a savings and investment perspective for me. And I'm going to be talking about my experience, but Jagvir, if I can, I'll go after Jagvir, but Jagvir has been my trainer in this organization. And he is a great leader. He's a calm, cool, collected guy, and he knows a ton of stuff about finance. And so he's a really good person to learn from. So I'm excited to have him here tonight, and thank you, Jagvir, for coming. And he trains large numbers of people in these products, so he's very well versed. I've been one of the people that has been lucky enough to be trained by him. So with that said, Jagvir, I'm going to go ahead. You should have the ability to share your screen as well, and I'm going to let you go ahead and add anything that you want that I didn't cover, and go ahead and kick it off.
Yep. Thank you, Garrett. And first of all, thank you for having me on this call. I know we've been working closely. You spoke very highly of this call, all right? So hello, everyone. My name is Jagvir. I don't know how to follow up with that introduction, right? So, thank you, Garrett, for the great introduction. But I'll just add a little bit about myself. I came to the U.S. when I was 11 years old. So basically grew up here, and went to middle school, high school, then graduated from Rutgers University in New Brunswick, New Jersey, right? So one thing I graduated with, I'm sure, if you have family or kids, they can probably agree with that, a lot of debt, right? So I graduated around $40,000 to $50,000 of student loans, right? And that's just not me. It's majority of the American people that are going to school here, right? If you look at it, guys, I'm sure you guys can agree with me, right? There's not enough financial education being taught in schools and colleges and universities. Do you guys agree with that? Right?
100%.
So, so that's one side. And then, I really didn't care until I got married, right? I was working for one of the banks, JP Morgan Chase. I know one of you guys mentioned that, right? So I was working for that. Well, I was not in financial services. I was in IT, right? So I was on the back end, right? So never had to deal with retail. But one thing I learned over there, it's great bank. I was there for 12 plus years roughly. And, one of my managers said, hey, why don't you go talk to one of the financial planners, right? That he works with. And so I book the appointment, right? And first, this is as soon as I graduated like a couple years before. So I didn't have a lot of assets or a lot of money. So I just wanted financial advice where I can take my financial education further, right? So what happened, the first thing he asked, do you have $100,000 in your bank account? I say, I don't. Not in my 401k. I'm just starting my career, right? And he said, you know what? Let me refer you to a junior guy. And that guy asked me, do you have $50,000 for it? I said, no, I don't, right? And then what that guy did was, here's a 1-800 number, call this JP Morgan Chase. I said, I'm working for the bank, right? So, but, I'm still not able to get enough. So then I got married, and my wife, she was doing mortgages and she was financial savvy, right? So then I started understanding about finances a bit more, right? And started understanding because, when you run a family, it's a lot of financial education, finances has to be at the right place, right? Because, a lot of people, if you look at it, are paycheck to paycheck, right? And then, so after COVID, I said, you know what, I'm gonna resign from my job, and then I started pursuing. So I've been in the business for about, about three to 4 years now, and then we have opened up 2 offices, one in New York, one in North Jersey, and where Garrett is our partner as well, right? So we are expanding. But I met Garrett through a common friend, and then he asked me so bunch of questions before coming on board, right? So, and we were able to answer hopefully all those, right? That's why he joined, but we got licensed by the Department of Banking and Insurance, right? So if you guys look at it, right, what I learned in this company, that there's one issue, that number one issue that people are facing is debt, right? Common debt is a mortgage. How many of you guys agree with that? Right, which is 25, 30 years, right? And then second thing is, people are having issue with quality family time, right? There's not enough family time given to the families, because when I was growing up, my dad, he was the sole worker, right, in the household, and the whole family kind of lived off that, right? But now people are working not 1 job, 2 jobs, 3 jobs, and people are working in their retirement. Like I think Michael said as well, that he's working 2 couple days, part-time somewhere, right? So, and third thing is, people don't have the proper lifestyle, right? A lot of people cannot pay off their bills on time, cannot do the things that they want to do. And then what happens, people give up on their dreams as well, right? All these causes are, there's this, our main purpose is education, and what I believe is that all these concerns, all these things are happening because we're making money single-handed income. How many of you guys heard that concept before? Right? Basically, you're working 1 job, right? And let's say, I was working for JP Morgan Chase, right? I was dependent, right? My income was dependent on the income that, I had to work 40 hours, right? In order to bring in the paycheck. So that's where, and then second thing is, I cannot multiply that income as well, right? I cannot 5x or 10x my income. And that's where a lot of people see struggling with their debt, and if you look at it, right, majority of American people, or even outside, I would say, right, in North America or anywhere in the world, right, people cannot multiply their income twice in the next coming 2 years. If we can multiply our income twice, how are we going to increase our saving in the future? And then what is one thing happening in the next 2 years? Our expenses are going up, right? I remember when I got my driver's license in 2003, 2004, around that, I used to fill my car with like $7, $8, right? And then, now I just filled up my car, it was over $100, right? And that's how the inflation has gone up, right? So let me share my screen, and we'll guys understand the concept. And if you guys have any questions, we can take questions at the end. And I know Garrett will be covering some topics as well. Garrett, let me know if you guys can see my screen. All right.
I can see it.
Yep, we can see
All
it.
right. All right, perfect. So let's talk about, obviously, like I said, our main purpose is education. It's not, and then we will provide a solution according to that as well, right? But if you guys participate with me, right? I mean, if you guys see this quote, it says your lifestyle today is determined by the decisions you make, you or your loved ones made about money a long time ago. Do you guys agree with that? Right? Now and the future will be determined the decisions you make today about money, right? Whether it's you or your next generation, right? With an open mind today, right? I love educating people. You will learn these three things, right? Strategies to save money and ways to increase cash flow, right? I think Neil mentioned that he took out money from his 401k or IRA, invested into properties, right, Neil? So these are just some strategies that everybody should be aware about, right? If you see that piggy bank, right? People don't have enough. People want to have, if you have grandkids or kids, or even if yourself going to college, right? Where's the money going to come from? How about education, vacation, insurance? Healthcare is expensive. My mom, she just got a knee replacement surgery, and it was very, very expensive. Even though she had, insurances in place, but she still had to pay out of pocket. And you know what? I think they did the therapy for 2 months for her knee replacement. The insurance said we can't cover that anymore, right? Or if somebody wants a new car, retirement, all those things are very, very important. So you will learn how to do strategies to save money and ways to increase your cash flow, right? If you look at it, right, these are some of the common struggling thoughts we have every day. Number one, doesn't matter, where you are in life, you always want to get ahead financially. Number two, where and how to save money and where put money to work, right? Number three is one stream of income is not enough. We gotta, have multiple, like basically multi-hand income where we will be able to fulfill our family's dreams, right? Right? I'm sure I see Charles on my screen, I see Michael, right? You guys made money. It is important to make money, but don't you think it's more important to manage money? Right? Very, very important. So that's what we teach people, right? And then Garrett will be covering more of these strategies, but I'll go in a little bit in depth. But there's some powerful financial strategies to learn to maximize the benefits, right? Let's look into 4 financial cornerstones before planning the financial future, right? I see Charles. I don't know if you want to volunteer. Can you unmute because I see you on the screen, right?
Yeah, I can unmute.
All right. So, let's say I know you were talking about money. If you're saving money somewhere or you're investing money, what is the first thing you want?
FDIC insured.
FDIC insured, or basically you want a rate of return, right? So safety, you want the protection, you want the growth, safety, and you want tax advantages, right?
Yes.
Where you protect your assets, where you have the good rate of return, and your money is safe, whether it's FDIC insured or some other way it's insured, right? As long as you get your return back, right? And do you want to pay more taxes or less taxes? Less taxes is always better, right?
Well, seemingly so, yes. I think less taxes makes good sense. No pun intended.
Right? I mean, out of a plan, do you want to miss any of these 4 things, or you want all 4 probably? In one way or the other.
I think you really need to have your focus on all 4.
All 4, right? But now, and then, let's talk about compound interest. I know this is a philosophical, how many, like Albert Einstein, right? The famous mathematician, scientist, philosopher, whatever you want to call them, right? He created this rule, the rule of 72. Charles, have you ever heard of this rule before?
Yeah, it has to do with doubling your money it's something Yeah, Dad used to talk about it, the rule of 72.
Rule of 72, right? So basically what Mr. Einstein said was that take the number 72, you know, divided the rate of return you're getting, and that's how long your money will double in, right? For example, if somebody's getting 1% rate of return, 72 divided by 1, that means your money will double every 72 years. For example, in this scenario, you know, the person is at age of 29, they save $10,000. By the time they're 101, they will get $20,000, right? You know, and second is if somebody's getting 4%, 72 divided by 4, that's 18 years. So same 10,000 at age 29, at age 65 will be 40K. Or if somebody's getting 6% rate of return, 72 divided by 6, that's every 12 years. So same 10,000 at age 29, at age 65 is $80,000. Now, if somebody's getting 10% rate of return, their money is doubling about roughly 7 years. Just, you know, it's just where we're putting the money. So it's 10,000 at age 29, at age 65 is $320,000. At age 72 is $640,000, right? But now, you know, Charles, how many people are getting that 10% type of return average in America?
Oh, I don't have any idea, Javier.
Not many. I would say only about 6% people in America. You know, 94% people are average. Whether we go into a bank, what do the banks give us? If you put money in checking, savings, or even CDs, maybe between 1 to 6% if you're lucky.
So I
Right?
just moved a lot of money into a 5.3 high yield, I'm told, savings account.
Yeah. So 5.3, right? You know, but the thing is, you know, are we beating the inflation? I think, did you talk about inflation or was it somebody else?
Yeah, well, you know, this is the conversation I just had yesterday, and it really didn't get answered.
Yeah. So if you look at the average inflation is what, like 9% right now, or roughly, right? You know, if you're getting even 6% or 5%, we're not even beating the inflation, right? That's why a lot of Americans, you know, are we as Americans, we are stuck in debt, right? You know, every store we go to, what happens? They offer you a credit card. You know, we spend $1, we pay back $1.50. Who's getting rich? The banks, right? So this is one where we can. Garrett will show you how we can double our money. He will go into more of this detail, right? And then, you know, tax impact on your savings, right? So there's some tax now accounts such as saving accounts, CDs, brokerage accounts, or mutual funds. Basically, you got to pay taxes every year. And then there's tax later, such as 401ks, annuities, pension plans, or IRAs. And then there's tax advantages, right? You know, such as Roth IRA, cash accumulation, insurance policy, which, Garrett will cover all these three things. How to save more money on taxes, right? So now, if you look at who's becoming wealthy with our monthly paycheck, you know, if you look at accounts consuming your paycheck, you know, doesn't matter which age you are, number one is mortgage or rent, right? And then second is your monthly bills. And third thing is tax bills. Can we stop all these? No, we can't, right, Charles? Right. So what we gotta do, you know, before we make a payment to all these different accounts, you gotta make your family wealthy. You know, you gotta set up some type of wealth account, right? You know, which, like I said, Garrett will cover later on. Like, there's many ways of different wealth accounts, right? That we can show you, right? So now, if you know, this is a question that everybody gotta ask. You know, how much saving do you do every month with discipline to make your families wealthy, or are we just making others wealthy, right? So we gotta have some type of discipline to make our families wealthy, right? Now, I'll show you. You know, there's this wealth account called IUL, right? Which Garrett, like I said, will cover. You know, in this IUL, your income is, you get protection of your income, right? And also there's the sources to pay long-term estate taxes, right? And then there's government supported tax benefits, right? And then there's a way you can create generational wealth, and that leads to retirement income sources in tax preferred way, where you don't need to pay taxes in retirement, right? And then there's safety and growth of money, all in one account, right? Obviously, you gotta qualify for this account, right? So obviously, if we will cover all these strategies later on, right? And we can sit down either one-on-one, or we could do another Zoom call, right? But also on the other side, right? There's exponential business building opportunity in financial industry where we are growing our business. We're looking for the right people to work with, right? If you look at it currently, one second. Where are you spending your time, entire money to generate cash? Because in the end, whether doesn't matter where we are, what age we are, we always want to generate our cash flow, right? If you look at it, somebody who's an employee, there's a limited potential. Like I said, I used to trade my hours for dollars to make money, but there's no freedom. I got to work 40 hours, right? And then what you get, 2-3 weeks off vacation, right? And then there's a lot of people who are self-employed, where you invest time and money, but you kind of give up your lifestyle. Because if you're, for example, somebody who's a small owner, right? A small business owner, doesn't matter if the employee calls out, you gotta go in. And there's always a pressure of investment loss, right? And then third thing is business. Proper business is basically something like a McDonald's, where the system is running your business, and you increase your daily hours because now you have a team of people that you're working with, and you can multiply your income. And fourth thing is by becoming an investor, making money make money, basically, right? Like what we talked about, rule of 72. And money doesn't sleep or relax because money is always coming in, right? And that's where we get the passive income, right? So 95% of population in America is either employee or self-employed, but 5% is where businesses and investors are, right? Now, if you look at it, right, whether you're working or retired, ask this question to yourself, guys. Do you have a chance at your existing work to experience what the 5% people have access to, right? Which type of income do you currently make? Is it self-made incomes or system-made, right? Self-made income is such as salary, right? Where we put in the hours, you get paid, right? Or is commission, like basically, let's say if I sell something, I'll make a commission, right? Or is it margin, like if somebody's a small business owner, right? And that's where they get margin. System-made is, like a royalty income, like for example, owner of McDonald's, right? Dividend, where you get the dividend profit sharing within the company, right? And then, capital gains, you can sell the business for good, high percentage, right? That's all that, right? So now, do you have a chance at your existing work to experience system-made income without money investment, right? Without investment money, can you make a system-made income? Where are you getting royalty, dividend, and capital gains, right? Now, like I said, we are growing, right? We are looking for the right people to work with, right? You can experience multi-stream system-made income in financial industry, right? This is our company, World Financial Group, and all we're doing is changing the way of distribution in financial services and giving you a chance to develop your own royalty, dividend, and capital gain income, right? If you look at it, right, current financial industry, what is happening? I know, Charles, you went to, I think, JP Morgan Chase, and you were talking to some financial advisors. What is happening outside? This is, for example, you, right? We're dealing with products without financial education. Financial education is not being taught by schools or the banks or financial institutions, right? What are some of the financial products that people need help with? Number one is debt. Number two is insurance and estate planning. Third thing is investments such as 401k, Roth IRA, or different type of investments, right? And financial institutions are the same that are out there, right? Nationwide, Prudential, Crown, Voya, Wells Fargo, just to name a few, right? And all these companies that I just named, they're in transactional approach. They sell you a product For example, Charles, if you go into Wells Fargo, will they say go to Transmerica or Voya, or they want to tell you what they have?
I'm not sure I understood what you just said, Javier.
So let's say if you walk into a Wells Fargo bank, right? Will they say, hey, they will be only able to sell what Wells Fargo sells, right? They won't be able to sell you products from different companies, or and it's a transactional approach. So what are we doing at our company, right? Which is a new financial industry that we're working on. Is, for example, this is you, Charles. Our main focus is financial education. And then we set up a proper plan according to your dreams and goals that you want to achieve financially. And financial products are the same, whether it's debt, insurance, and estate planning or investment, right? And it's with the same financial institutions that majority of the people deal with. But like I said, our approach is not transactional, it's education. For second, pick and choose. We are like Expedia or Amazon of financial services, right? If you look at it, right, we're over here, anybody, you can develop your own business in the financial industry, right? There's three ways that we can develop, right? Because number one, there's massive demand for financial education and solution. Number two, it's a system-driven business where we are growing through systematically, right? So where we will help you get the market, expand distribution. Number three is we have an infrastructure, where we will train someone and train others quickly, right? Let me just show you incredible income potential, and we can set one-on-one later, right? And I can take questions. Let's say if you get licensed and you become an advisor with us, right? But you will be licensed whichever states you're in, or even in Canada, we're growing, right? So, let's say if you just become an advisor, you get the licensed by the Department of Banking and Insurance. And, if you just help somebody save $750 monthly in qualified plans, you can easily make $5,000 to $8,000 if you're just an advisor, right? And what you will need to do is serve more to earn more, right? And let's say if you become a broker with us, right, where you have multiple licensed advisors, your income potential goes up to potentially $15,000 to $20,000 if they're just helping somebody save stuff. Now, and all these customers come through a system, right? You don't need to spend a lot of money on marketing or none of that, right? We have a system where the money is system need driven, right? And then you have a chance within our company to become an entrepreneur, where you basically, become a franchise owner, right? And you give out franchises to other people as well, right? So you have, multiple brokers with you, and they're also franchisor, right? And this is where you're making 35 to 40,000 monthly royalty and dividend income, right? So, chance for you in the financial industry where you start as an advisor, broker, or entrepreneur. So like I said, we're growing, we're looking for the right people to work with on the business side, right? And also we are helping people educate on the financial side as well, right? And three things will happen after this meeting. Number one, we can help you sit down with us, ask questions to get clarity, and we can become business partners and start the business with us, right? Number two is, you sit down to ask questions, get clarity, and we can help you properly save money. And like I said, Garrett will cover this more in detail. Number three is you overthink it, avoid sitting, delay action, miss the chance, right? Like at the end, all I want to say is life is all about choices, guys. Your present is because of the choices you made in the past, and your future will be determined by the choice you will make today. And thank you. This is my contact information. If you guys need to reach out, I'll share in the Zoom chat as well. And Garrett, over to you.
Well, great, Javier. Thanks so much. So now I'm gonna follow that up with a modified deck. I gave this presentation a while back before I had learned about IUL, and wow, with IUL, it's a big game changer as far as like the returns you can get and someone was saying I could watch Warren Buffett. Warren Buffett, throughout his career, he's gotten a 20% return on investment pre-tax. I'm going to show you how you can get an equivalent 22% without quite as much, complexity as Warren Buffett goes through with all of his due diligence on company purchases, et cetera, the huge amount of wealth of strategic knowledge he has. And obviously there are huge numbers of investors out there. There's only one Warren Buffett, but I will actually show you how to get a better return on investment than Warren Buffett. I know it sounds unbelievable. And when Jagvir told me about this product, I didn't believe it was true. And I'm like, is this guy going to scam me? And, sorry, Jagvir, but I didn't know what to expect. I was like, what's going on here? Like, this sounds way too good to be true. And I kept vetting and I said, well, I'm just going to poke and try to poke holes in it. And it turns out to be real. I've talked to the insurance company that offers it. I'm now an owner of this insurance product. I'm only going to talk 10% about the insurance product. Most of what I'm going to talk about is savings and investment. But I understand why someone would be skeptical of what I'm saying, because it does sound too good to be true. But I'm telling you, from what I can tell, it's real, and I'm going to be, going through the motions this month to fully vet it out with 100% certainty. And most of it, the strategy I've already tested and used to do very well with my investments and my retirement income. But the IUL part is still relatively new to me, but I do have an IUL policy now and am playing with it. So
Garrett,
yeah,
sorry, can you explain what IUL is?
I will explain that. There's a slide on that.
Okay.
So sorry, bear with me. I will
okay.
get to it. So
No
first
problem.
of all, I'm going to talk about a lot about budgeting, savings, and investment. This is how to retire safely before, age 65, with much more income coming in from your investments than you make when you retire. If you retire at 65, you can actually retire much earlier than that, and still make more. I do want to give a quick plug for the Freethinker Institute if I can. That's the event that brings you tonight's event. The Freethinker Institute is a not-for-profit looking to support and empower members to be the best version of ourselves, to seek truth, and to be fair. And I don't know where my well, basically I'll just wing it. So basically we want to create a community that is welcoming and inclusive of all backgrounds, political, social, socioeconomic, everything you can imagine that divides people. We want to unite people under a common banner of what we call the 5 intentions. The first of which is to be the best version of ourselves, to seek truth, and to be fair. And we want to do this by creating a community. And when you become a member of the FTI, you're a member of that community. Just coming here, you're an extended member of the community, but here you're like a cousin, whereas when you're a member of the FTI, you're like a sibling, right? You're part of the actual family, the nuclear family. And so we really want to create a world where everyone makes enough money that money no longer buys happiness, or it does in a large amount of money only creates a small amount more happiness. And studies show that over $100,000 USD a year per year, more money only creates happiness logarithmic to the amount of money created. You'll see what's meant by that when I go through the numbers. But basically it means that huge amounts of money will only create a small amount more of happiness once you get over $100,000 a year. There's what's called diminishing returns with more money after $100,000 a year. Up to $100,000 a year, more money tangibly makes your life a lot better because you're not worried about making ends meet day to day. I will show you how even a person graduating from college making minimum wage and getting 4% salary increases per year can become financially independent, not only for themselves, but for generations following the same strategy. We also want to enable transformational personal and professional growth and spread ideas that maximize happiness and minimize harm. So I'm going to put a link that teaches you more about the FTI in the chat. And there it is. And there's a bunch, it's a link of links. Agenda wise, I'm going to tell you at the beginning what you'll be able to accomplish. That slide might be out of date. Let's see if I updated it. I'll talk about what today's class costs. None of you paid anything. You're not going to be asked to pay anything either before you leave, but it's kind of you'll hear it's a tongue-in-cheek joke. I'm going to tell you a little bit about me, talk about cash flows, money in, money out, debt management, investment, and measuring and increasing net worth, which is how much money, if you sold all your assets today, your net worth is how much money you would have if you sold all your assets today. So that said, let's get started. So I will explain how you can retire at age 65 with tens of millions of dollars, even when, like I said, you only start out with a minimum wage job. And I have to actually say this in a slightly different way. We're not allowed to give investment advice if we're not a fiduciary. So what I'm going to do is give a hypothetical me and say, if I had started with this savings and investment plan when I graduated college, I was making minimum wage and getting 4% salary increases per year, then I'll explain, how I've tried to live debt free and save for vacations and big expenses. It does require discipline and compromise, but it's very doable if you have that discipline. And most of it is about not wasting money. And if you like what I've done here, then you're welcome to copy it. Basically, I can basically create dynastic wealth in my lifetime with this strategy, just in one generation. So my legal disclosure, I have to give a legal disclosure because, again, I'm not a fiduciary. So, just take a quick read at this, and then so if you wanted to get savings and investment advice from someone who was going to be a fiduciary, you have to pay usually $2,000 to $5,000 a month. They'll probably give you advice that won't work as well as the investment strategy I'm using. I think it was Charles that gave an example that his investment advisor was recommending, a 10 to 12% return. That's usually considered very good. Like Jagbir said, that's above where most Americans are today. I'm going to show you how I get way above that. I'm just really sharing what I do. And again, you're welcome to copy it. If you want to talk offline about how I do it, I'm happy to do that. I'll give you my contact at the end. If you do get an investment advisor, I recommend comparing what I do with what they do, and let me know how it goes. So my background, I was 10 years at G Capital. I moved up the ranks until I reported to the CIO of a $250 million net income business. It was a highly recognized company when I worked there. I also worked at a mutual fund, which is how a lot of wealthy people invest retirement and spare money. I've spent hundreds of hours of research about personal finance and read dozens of books about personal finance. I've worked for PwC in a joint venture with Google, so Big Four consulting, problem solving type of stuff. Pretty much my whole career, I've been doing problem solving, and had a successful career as a software inventor, which in the industry is called product management, head of product or head of engineering. I do as well. So let's talk first about cash flows in. Your job typically is how most people get a cash flow in, like Jagbir talked about. Most people just have a job, and it can be good to start a small business in your spare time to get a second type of income, or to have a side gig. And a side gig is just another way of making money on the side that helps you earn additional income that supplements your typical job. And sometimes they can become more prosperous than the job itself. I've read in books about people who started dog walking businesses making $200,000 a year. And they started it in their spare time, but they grew it and they got enough customers and did a good enough job, and then hired other dog walkers and made it into a business. So it basically helps you supplement your regular income. Now, cash out, you want to look at how much cash in you're getting and how much cash out is going out every month for a couple of months, and see how much money is left over. If you don't have 15% of your gross income left over, like the top level income before taxes are out, then your cash flow is not good enough yet, and you should probably try to manage your expenses better. You could go down below this. The scenario that I use with at the end for the Destin Millionaire solution is actually using only about a little less than half of this. but that's because you want to spend about about half of this on you know, expenses along the way. And so I'm also just trying to be conservative in my estimates. So how do you reduce expenses for anyone that's not at that 15%? You want to list out all your expenses, look at them individually, and ask for each one, was it necessary that I purchase this? If it was, is there a less expensive alternative available that I could use? And if there is, then you know, use the less expensive, you know, maybe even return it if you still can, and buy the less expensive alternative, or next time buy the less expensive alternative. And you want to try to reduce expenses until, again, you have about 15% of gross salary left over after paying expenses for the month. You want to be really strict with yourself. You know, we all want splurges, but the savings is going to turn into enough money that you can live, no joke, an extravagant life, you know, in, you know, a couple decades later, as long as you save this amount of money in the beginning. So you'll notice, you know, starting out making minimum wage, you're not making a lot of money. So you'll see when I show the growth of the income with this strategy that if I had used this, I'm going to show an example of if I had used this strategy coming out of college. I didn't know about this. Unfortunately, I would be doing much better than I am, although I've done very well in my career. My real estate has mostly doubled since I bought it. Each of the properties I've bought, other than the house that I just bought 2 years ago, has pretty much almost doubled, if not doubled. But I'm telling you, like, what I do now will actually do better than what I've done in real estate. So, debt management. If you do have debt, you want to pay it off ASAP. You generally, if you have too much debt to be able to pay it off reasonably, you can generally negotiate to pay a fraction of your debt with a payment plan. There are service providers and not-for-profits that'll help you pay credit card debt off and negotiate so that you don't have to pay it all off. You can get discounts on what you're going to pay, because if you're just not going to be able to pay it back, they'd rather get a fraction of it back than none of it back if you declare bankruptcy. And if that doesn't work, the last resort is bankruptcy. You really don't want to do that. It's hard to find a place to live when you declare bankruptcy. A lot of places won't rent to you, and they're allowed to discriminate on that because it's credit record stuff. So it's a very last resort, and it kills your credit record for a long time. Now, if you just need time to pay off your debt and your credit score is okay, you can get a credit card that has a 0 interest rate, and you move your debt with a balance transfer to the 0 interest rate credit card, which gives you another 12 months to pay that debt off. You can probably bounce that around a number of times before, you know, to give you more time to pay off your debt. So that's a strategy to help you pay off credit card debt if you do have credit card debt. And it takes 2 to 3% of interest to do the balance transfer, but it's well worth getting 12 months interest free. And sometimes you can get more, you can get 18 months, sometimes even 24 months interest free. So keep an eye out for credit cards. You can Google like highest interest, you know, longest term interest free credit cards, and you can see what's out there and what credit score is required and what your credit score is. You do want to keep your credit score high to stay eligible for these cards. If you don't know how to keep your credit score high, I recommend using ChatGPT. It will give you lots of tips on credit scores and how to keep them high. And you know, definitely try hard to keep your credit scored high. Paying all your bills on time every month is a very important part of that, but there's a lot more that goes into it as well. So debt management, when you're paying off debt, I recommend paying off the highest interest debt first, because that's the debt you pay the most amount of money for. There are different people with different strategies here. To me, this is just the smartest because it's the one that saves you the most money. You know, it's the strategically most financially efficient, and that's, you know, what I go for. Some people like paying off the smaller amount debts first so that they have fewer debts. But if you have a bigger debt with more interest, you really want to pay that down first. So, because you're paying more money to have that debt. Now, once your debt is all below 7 to 8% interest, which is, you know, probably not so far away from where mortgages are now, you know, you don't have to worry about that. You're going to get a much higher return on investment if you're copying my strategy. So let me go to the next slide. So now I'm going to introduce IUL. So I'm not going to introduce it all at one time. I'm going to do it in 2 phases. The second phase is 2 slides from now. So first, I'm going to say beware of pretty much most IULs, but the one that I use is actually really good. Now, if you follow up with me, I can explain which one is good. I'll explain IUL as if, you know, this is what IUL is, and but all IULs are not made the same. A lot of IULs have a lot of things that are not advantageous for the consumer. The one that I recommend and that I own is very good for the consumer. And so I will just say, if you research IUL, there could be bad stuff about it because people are tainted by the majority of IULs, which aren't always the best. But there is a good apple in the orchard, and I can point you to it if you want, and tell you which one I'm using. So the start of why it's so great. First of all, it's a life insurance policy, first and foremost, but you overfund it. And when you overfund it, it creates a cash value. What the cash value means is the cash value, you can always surrender that insurance policy and get the cash value out, but that's not the best way to use it. What you can do is that cash value is earning interest for you while it remains in the insurance policy based on a global stock indices of the best companies in the world in the US, Europe, and Asia. So globally diversified. If you read a little bit about investment advice, diversification is a key part. Most people are not globally diverse. This is actually globally diverse. You don't get quite as high a return on investment being globally diverse, but you do sort of hedge the risk of, you know, US stock market issues. The most you can earn in 1 year is 13%, but I'll explain why that's not bad. Even if all the stock indices crash, you never lose money. So if you have $100,000 cash value and the stock market, you know, crashes globally, which, you know, hopefully we don't have that, but, you know, the stock market did just go down quite a bit recently, then you lose nothing. Your value is still $100,000, and when a year passes, you actually earn a minuscule amount of 0.75% interest. And so you don't ever lose money with a cash value. So as Jagbeer was talking, you're protected against all downside risk, which is really cool. Now you're limited in your upside risk. The insurance company has to make money. Sometimes the, you know, stock indices go up 40%. Well, the insurance company is making a bucket load of money if they're investing in that stock market when it goes up 45%, and you only got 13%. But don't worry, it's okay. I'll explain why later. But basically, you don't ever take the money out of the cash value if you retain the policy. You are allowed to borrow against it. And if you borrow against it, you're borrowing against the cash value. You're not taking money out. So you never have to pay tax on it because you're just borrowing against it. You pay interest on the borrowing, the amount you borrow. And as I'll explain, the interest, the first 10 years you have the policy, it's 0.8% interest, like almost no interest, not 8%, 0.8%, less than 1% interest to borrow the money. After 10 years, it's 0% interest, net. There's a higher interest and then they credit you back. But the net interest of the policy that I got works that way. So that's all I'm going to say about IUL for now. I'm going to come back to a few more cool things about it in a little bit. But basically, the first thing I recommend is you put that 15% of gross salary or whatever you can come up with into an IUL, you know, overfunding an IUL policy. That's what I'm doing now. And basically, this amount is automatically deducted each month from the bank, and the money keeps accumulating. And I'm planning to have 6 months worth of cash outflows, which is living expenses, in the IUL. Now, that's what I'm going to use as my emergency fund so that, you know, God forbid, you know, my wife and I lose our income at the same time, then we at least have emergency funds that are very safe. They can never go down, but we get 8% per year on average in the last 20 years, because that's what, you know, the global stock indices have returned after all the what's called the floor and the cap. The 13% is the most you can earn. It's called the cap. And the 0.75% floor is the least you can earn, even if all the stock indices crash. So you have emergency access to cash. You're getting a better interest rate than the bank. So all of that is kind of cool. But it gets a little better. So let me tell you a little more about the IUL that I purchased. And here's the most interesting thing about it. Even when you borrow money from the IUL, as long as you pay the loan back, you're still earning interest. And this is a little hard to wrap your head around. So I'm going to give a very tangible example, I believe, in the next slide. Do I give a tangible example in the next slide? Give me 1 second. In 2 slides. And basically, like a credit card, you should never borrow money from the IOL that you can't pay back. And you should always, and then you'll always earn the interest on the money in the IUL. And that's about being fiscally, careful, like financially careful. It's like, choosing to never put money on a credit card that you can't pay off at the end of the month. You only want to put money on a credit card at the end of the month. That you can pay off at the end of the month. And in the next slide, I'll explain how can the insurance company possibly afford to pay me interest on money that I've borrowed, meaning that they don't hold on to that money because I have the money in my pocket, and it's not in their pocket. Next, I'm going to explain how I can use IUL to save for retirement, a house, vacations, and other big expenses. So, how can the insurance company, afford to pay interest on money that they don't even have in their hands? Great question. And the answer is the insurance is expensive, first of all, so they make good money on the insurance. But I will tell you, after 1 year of accumulating cash value, the interest on the cash value actually pays for the insurance. So now you essentially have more or less a premium insurance policy, which is pretty cool. It's got some nice attributes that I'll talk about a little later. And then the second thing is most people with IUL don't use the strategy I'm giving you. Just like a lot of people with credit cards don't pay off their credit cards every month. And those people, the insurance company makes a lot of money on. The people in the IUL, what they do is they either borrow the money and never pay it back, in which case they never earn the interest. So basically the insurance company had the money when they had the money and they made money off it then. And I'll tell you, because 8% return on investment, the S&P 500 makes an 11% return on investment since its founding in the 1950s. I think it was 54. And so paying 8% is not a big deal for the insurance company. They can be profitable. They get a much higher return on investment themselves than that. So the second thing is, if you borrow the money and never pay it back, they never have to pay the interest at all. So the insurance company's fine there. And that's the majority of people. It's the minority that actually borrow the money and pay it back. So what I'm going to tell you is, don't follow my strategy unless you're sure you can pay the money back. I'm being very careful when I have this IUL that I never spend the money on something that won't let me pay it back. So second is, the insurance company that I use is over 100 years old. It's highly rated. They have plenty of money to pay for their obligations. They're regulated by the state insurance company. There's $500,000 of insurance, which is, not as much as your policy will eventually become worth, but it at least gives you a sense that there is backing behind these policies. I think it's more important that the insurance company is highly rated. That's what gives me a sense of security, because it tells me that the state, when they audit the insurance company, they say this insurance company has all the money to pay all the obligations that they have, which includes all the IUL policies, and they have a lot of them. The one that I use, they're a market leader. So next, I talked about how credit card companies make their money by people not paying their credit cards off and paying over 20% per year in interest and then getting drowned in debt. So financially savvy wins the race. And next, I'm going to say, how do you make money in 2 places at once? So this is the way that I use this strategy to be financially creative, but perfectly legal, and not even like gray line at all. Like, this is the perfectly acceptable use of the policy. So once my IUL has a cash value of more than 6 months, the emergency money, I'm going to start investing. And so I'll borrow any funds higher than that 6-month amount, and I'm going to invest them in the stock market. Now, you can invest in different ways in the stock market. I'm going to give an example of how I invest, which is a very safe, diversified way that gets you, as someone was saying, I think it was Charles, between 10 and 12%, usually around 11%. That's investing in the S&P 500. I use a Vanguard S&P 500 ETF. Now, if my cash value is 112% on January 1st, and say 6 months of expenses is $12,000, and say on 1/1 I borrow $100,000, I transfer it to my brokerage account. I invest in that S&P 500 ETF, which on average, like I said, earns 11% per year after reinvesting dividends, which is what you'll want to do if you're going to follow my strategy. And then on December 31st, I have $111,000 on average. Now I need to pay capital gains, which is low on the $11,000. So maybe I have $109,000 left. Now I have $100,000 that I used to pay back the loan on 1/1 that I took on 1/1 for $100,000 from the cash value insurance policy. It immediately turns into $108,000. And I don't have to pay tax on that $8,000. It's tax-free because I'm always just borrowing against that cash value. So next year I can borrow $108,000, and you can see how the money goes up and up and up. And now I just earned 11% pre-tax or 9% after tax, and then 8% after tax on the same money in the same year. So that if you add it up, it's basically about 100 and I said 116, it's about $117,000 after tax. I was forgetting that it's capital gains tax, which is a lower tax rate. That may change, by the way, but either way, then it would, the 116,000 would probably be accurate, depending on your tax bracket. Either way, I don't mean to overcomplicate it, but really what it comes down to is on January 1st, you borrowed $100,000, and on December 31st, you have $116,000. You know, that's, $116,000 or $117,000. So now, this is a huge return on investment. Like, remember I said Warren Buffett gets on average a 20% return on investment. You can add the numbers up here where, that's 20% pre-tax. And so he has to pay tax on that 20% investment. So, you can add the numbers up and compare. So how do I invest in the stock market? I mentioned to you what I do, but I will tell you the things that I considered investing in is the Dow Jones Industrial Average, which is all the big companies in, it's a large number of big companies. I forget exactly how many companies is in the Dow. A lot of old school, highly profitable, large companies. The Russell 2000 is small companies. The NASDAQ are technology companies. The S&P are like blue chip, which are like, traditional, highly successful financial companies. I use Vanguard because they're not for profit, and they are very inexpensive and high quality in terms of companies that offer ETFs. So that's why I like them. You can use whoever you want. And if I want to take a little risk, which I do in some of my investment accounts, I look at index funds that will do well given current macroeconomic trends. So for example, we have an aging population in the US, so healthcare expenses are going up. So I think healthcare funds are going to do well. So I bought an index fund that buys in healthcare companies, and I think that it'll outperform some of these other ones above. If that sounds complicated, don't bother trying to do it. Not a big deal. Only copy the stuff that makes sense to you. That's one thing that Warren Buffett always says is only invest in things that you understand. The only exception I would say to that is if you're investing in diversified large numbers of highly successful companies, seems pretty safe to me, especially because if you look at the S&P 500, if one of those 500 companies is unsuccessful, they will be removed from the index and they'll be replaced with someone who is successful. So it automatically adjusts for all of these four indices, automatically adjusts for the safe, high return investments. They're pretty diversified, although the NASDAQ is all in technology, so that's not as diversified. It's got extremely low expenses and increasing net returns. If you go to ChatGPT and you ask for good investment advice, these are all things that they will tell you are good investment advice. I have outperformed the average mutual fund, which are professional investors, after you include their expenses with this investment strategy, on a regular basis. I'm, overall, like throughout the time that I've used it, I've outperformed it. and I looked retrospectively, I would have on average outperformed it throughout my lifetime if I had just followed this strategy earlier on, but I didn't know this strategy earlier on. And so I want to tell people about it because, you know, I wish I'd known it earlier on. I would be worth a lot more, and I'm certainly not doing badly, but I think I'll do better for the next half of my life. So next, I think it's kind of funny that I'm not allowed to give advice legally. Only the professional investors can, and I'm outperforming them. So I think there's a certain irony in that. So I'm going to try to go to the questions in the chat. I'm seeing really good questions. I'm going to go to those after the presentation. I'm getting close to finished, I think. I don't know what, I'm on slide 20 of 29. So I have 6 or 7 more slides. So now it's time to start saving. The value of the IOL cash value and stock portfolio go up very quickly, much faster than that of my peers. And as our salary goes up, the amount that like the insurance is a fixed amount of insurance that you can invest. You can't invest over a certain amount, or it's no longer considered insurance. So you have to keep increasing the amount of insurance you have over time if you want to keep increasing the amount of cash value that you can create each year. So it can get a little, you know, a little burdensome, but it's very doable. As long as your health remains good, you can keep increasing the amount of insurance you have. And if I'm ever no longer able to secure more insurance, then I would put money into a Roth IRA, which is a great investment vehicle. Although what I'm doing gets a much better return on investment than a Roth IRA. Even though the Roth IRA has a great tax advantage where the money that gets the increase in money doesn't get taxed. But in this case, I'm getting 8%, which is going up on top of my my 11%, which gets return on investment that's getting taxed. So I'm actually getting a much better return on investment in a much safer way on average than a Roth IRA even. But if I did run into a situation where I couldn't invest more into the insurance and this strategy that I'm using, then I would put it into a Roth IRA. If I have more money, I would put it into a regular IRA and put it into index fund ETFs. Hopefully that doesn't happen, but that is a backup plan if I want to. I could also put it into real estate. Like I said, I've done really well with real estate, so I think Neil was the one that invested in real estate. Smart move, Neil. Real estate is a good investment in general, so that's another place that you can spend money. You can also spend IUL money buying real estate, although you have to make sure that the real estate ends up being profitable for you so that you can end up paying that loan back, because you don't want to borrow money that you can't pay back, as we talked about. You can also use part of the IUL to pay for major expenses, vacations, health issues, etc. And you have a bucket of money that you can use for whatever you need. Again, just make sure that you can pay it back. But if you're growing your, like what I'm going to be doing is growing my stock value in parallel to my insurance value. And so if I borrow from the insurance, I can use the stock money, you know, the increase in stock money to pay back the insurance. So you just want to keep tabs on your money and make sure you're being financially smart about it. And basically, you can decide based on your financial health how much to spend on saving for a home versus major expenses versus other options. One of my first priorities was to buy a home, and I'm going to explain why. You can tax deduct the interest on a mortgage, and in the early years of a mortgage, most of the payment is taxed. So most of it is tax deductible. You know, if you have a $2,000 mortgage, you know, $1,600 or something like that is going to be tax deductible. It's really high early on. And then as you go later on in the mortgage, there's much less that's tax deductible. But that works out really well because you usually want to buy, you know, the nicest home that you can afford. You don't want to go crazy, but the nicest home you can afford, because you'll get that tax deduction, which makes it a little cheaper and more affordable to live in. And then as you increase your salary and your investment income, you'll be better able to afford that mortgage over time, because the mortgage doesn't go up if you get a fixed price mortgage, which I always recommend getting a fixed rate mortgage. Or I have always, sorry, I can't recommend anything, right? So I always have gotten fixed rate mortgages because I don't want my mortgages going up when interest rates go up like they have recently. And after I pay off my mortgage, living in the home is very inexpensive, and I'll have a large amount of equity in my home that I can tap into if I want to sell and move to a retirement community or something like that. I rented the second bedroom in my first apartment out, which made it much cheaper to live in and help pay the mortgage. And then when I moved out, I'm in the process of renting the whole thing. And it should be either break even or profitable, but I'm also earning equity, meaning I'm paying off that mortgage, and eventually it'll be all paid off, and then it'll be very profitable to rent out. Or maybe I'll move back there, we'll see. So what can you get? If I had done this coming out of college when I was 22, if I had known about this strategy and I made $30,000 a year, and I'm giving a hypothetical because I don't want to reveal all my personal finance information to y'all. I love you all, but we're not getting that personal right now. So if I had graduated at 22, making $30,000 a year, and my salary went up by 4% per year conservatively, then when I retired at 65, even if I had invested only 7% of my income, and remember I said put 15% into IUL, but it's okay if some of it you can't pay back, it's not the end of the world, but if you put 7% of income per year into the IUL, and suppose that the other 8% goes into paying the cost of the insurance, although like I said, the interest pays that off after the first year, more or less, and then buying real estate, paying for vacations, health issues, etc., then I would have, when I retire at 65, $29 million of savings and cash value, like stock and cash value, like basically liquid assets is what it's called, things that I can just get cash right away. Now, the investment income I would make is about $5.2 million. And my salary when I was 65, given the scenario that I said, would be 162,000. So some people are going to go, well, that 5.2 million, it's not worth much because of inflation. Well, no, my salary was going up faster than inflation typically goes up, and I was making 162 grand, whereas I'm making, many times, more than 10 times that, probably more than 20 times that, and about 20 times that in investment income. Now, if I withdraw the stock and I sell the stock, I do have to pay income on that. But again, that's like 20%. The IUL increase in value, I don't have to pay tax on. Now, 76 is the average mortality rate for men in the US. So at 76, my estate would be worth approximately $200 million. That is dynastic wealth in one generation. Now, this assumes that I could qualify for insurance every year that has an increase in value, and all the way up till, a high rate. Once you get to over 70, you're not going to qualify for this insurance anymore for increasing the insurance amount. So there are a few unrealistic assumptions, but not totally unrealistic assumptions. And even if we cut everything in half, I hope it still sounds pretty good. And let me give another non-trivial benefit. I said that I was going to come back to this of IUL. It is a premium life insurance. And first and foremost, it's intended to be a premium life insurance. It's got some really cool savings and investment stuff that I've talked to you about that I'm taking advantage of. And it is expensive, but the interest does pay for it after year one, I believe. And then the major benefits are accelerated death benefits. So if you become terminally ill or critically ill, which basically means you can't care for yourself, which recently happened to a family member of mine who is older, he's getting a lot of bills, and he's got to pay all those bills. Whereas if he had had this insurance, there would be an accelerated death benefit. They would take part of the benefit of when he passes away, and they would pay that out during his lifetime, just like they will for me or my wife for having this policy. And it'll cover those expenses during our lifetime, which is pretty cool. There's also something called a funeral concierge service. Now, I don't know, I hope no one has had to deal with the funeral of a loved one, but I'll tell you, when you're the person in charge of the funeral, you're usually the person that was closest to the person who died. You are not price shopping for the funeral. Like, very few people, let's put it that way, have the wherewithal to go through such a devastating thing and be price shopping for a funeral. But what funeral concierge does is, these people know the funeral industry. And even if you did price shop, you wouldn't even know how much stuff is worth, because none of us, at least I'm not knowledgeable. I'm knowledgeable about a lot of stuff, but I don't know anything about the funeral industry. I have no idea what the going prices for things are. Well, what they do is the funeral concierge service, and this only comes with this policy if you get $250,000 of insurance or more. But if you do, then they come to you after they come to your next of kin after you pass away and say, well, what do you want for the funeral? And you give them the information, and then they go around and they look for the places to get it and to get everything you want at the best price possible. And so it takes away the burden of, you know, going out and figuring out a lot of logistics of the funeral. And now, you know, if I was handling my closest family member's funeral and I walk into a funeral parlor and say they want a coffin, they're going to upsell me and they're going to be like, well, this is the deluxe coffin, it's $10,000. Well, even if I wanted that same coffin, the funeral concierge service knows that you can buy it wholesale, the very same coffin for $1,000, but I wouldn't have known that, right? And these guys do. So anyway, I think it's cool. I want that for, you know, whoever handles my funeral. And so it's a you know, a nice benefit. So next thing I'm going to talk about credit card advice. I highly recommend getting a good cashback credit card. There are a number of 2% plus cashback credit cards through Fidelity, Bank of America, a few others. Bank of America, if you have a big enough balance, I think can get above 2%. And if you Google cashback credit cards, you can find them. There's 90-day theft and breakage insurance, which if you buy a glass vase and you literally just slip and drop it and it crashes on day 89 after you bought it, it's insured up to $500. That's pretty cool. So I have had stuff like that happen and it was insured. They covered it. You know, theft, breakage, no questions asked. Even if it's your fault, they still insure it. It's really cool. And then extended 1-year warranty. I don't know if you guys know this, but manufacturers know when their stuff's going to break. And the manufacturer's warranty lasts as long as the stuff's going to last. And so if you get an extra year, you'd be amazed at how often stuff breaks the year after the manufacturer's warranty runs out. So if you get an extra year, you know, you're way better off. I've had a number of times where you have to keep careful records, but if you do, you can save a bunch of money by getting things warrantied by an extension, a 1-year extension of the warranty. There's also price match. Like if you buy something, I don't know if this happens to you guys often. It doesn't happen that often to me, but it does to my wife. You buy something and you're like, see the same thing 2 weeks later for 20% less. Well, if that happens, you can show them the ad for the same thing 20% less. They'll give you the money back for having found a cheaper version of that thing. That's pretty cool for people who shop a lot and see the same product cheaper. I never do, so it doesn't help me much. There's also no foreign exchange currency transaction fees. I think the one that I use is like the Ink by Chase, but I'm not positive. So if you Google no foreign exchange currency transaction fee credit cards, you'll want to use that one when you travel abroad because the currency fees can be a little rough. And it's nice to have no foreign currency fees. A lot of people don't know that those fees exist, but they do. But so some bank account advice. It's nice to get no ATM fees for withdrawals unless you have a bank that is everywhere you ever go, which I don't know that any bank is ever everywhere that we ever go, especially if you're in another country. You want to get a bank like Schwab and TD Bank, which you know, I have both of, and they reimburse the fees for you know, ATM withdrawals. You get free wires at TD Bank once a month for a regular account, and Silicon Valley Bank, which is a startup bank, is unlimited wires or up to $500 a month worth of wires or any fees reimbursed. They also, SVB gives higher percent of interest. This is obviously old, the 1% interest. I forgot to update that. I don't know what they're up to now, but they gave 1% interest when everyone was giving like 0.1% interest. So they were on the higher end. And American Express Personal Savings is another one that I have that gives good interest rate, but not nearly 8%, which my money's much better off in the IUL policy. But Ally and Betterment also have higher than average interest rates. And then you want to keep above monthly balances so you don't have to pay monthly fees, if at all possible. Reducing and eliminating student loans. People mention student loans. If anyone has more than $20,000 of federal student loans and or are out of school, chances are good I can introduce you to someone who can significantly reduce or eliminate those loans. the way this works, the government in its infinite wisdom has many, many programs to help people reduce federal loans, and then they don't advertise them anywhere or tell anyone about them at all. And so the people that I would introduce you to are experts in all the things that everybody could qualify given whatever situation, and they'll connect you with places that will give loan relief. And I have seen examples of two people in the same family, each with over $100,000 of loans that were completely eliminated. So they do a great job. If anyone wants help with that, I put a link in here. I'll share the presentation. I'm sorry I'm running so long. We usually try to keep this under an hour. I'm almost done. In fact, this is my last slide. So I'm curious in the Q&A, what barriers do you see to following this advice? What other questions do you have? We'll have lots of practical stuff like this in the FTI. We're all about practical philosophy. If anyone wants one-on-one financial advice, it's part of what I do as a hobby. And so if you want to know what IUL I'm using, I'm happy to talk to you about that as well. And I can get it for you. I can also help you get it for friends and family. So here's an email that you can use, garrett@wfgteam.com. And with that said, I think we're going to go on to one other thing I wanted to show is, no, I'll just go to the Q&A. If anyone wants to see the spreadsheet that I put together to come up with the numbers, I'm happy to show you, but that's kind of the very nitty-gritty details. So I'd love to hear what questions people have. Feel free to raise your hand and I'll try to go through. Unfortunately, Kenneth, IUL is a US thing as far as I know, but Shujan may have something, but it doesn't have the same tax benefits. Yeah, no, Canada doesn't offer IUL. So unfortunately, Canadians are out of luck. It's a US thing, but go ahead, Jagvir, if I'm mistaken.
Yeah, so IUL is only offered in the US, but in Canada, we do work with a group of people that can offer similar products, but not the same. And, where the safety is a lot better. At least you get a little bit safety. I can recommend you, I can connect you with those people, and then we have advisors. And if you're looking for that, I can connect you with those.
Great. Thanks, Jagvir. And Jagvir, did I get anything wrong? Was I all right?
That was great. And then one thing I just want to add, right? There's another investment that we could do. It's called fixed index annuities, right? Where if somebody's close to a retirement age, they can get like a lump sum payment if they carry over the roll over the 401k money and all that. So let me just share this real quick. So let me give you an example. So this is one of our clients that we helped with, right? So the client, he had about $300,000 in his Roth IRA, and then we rolled it over. The company is nationwide, and they gave him a 30% bonus offer. I know this sounds good to be true, but they did. And until he keeps the money in there, they're giving him an 8% rate of return. So what happens after 10 years? So in this product, there's like an income-driven product, right? So this money, that 30% bonus and 8% is only used for the income base, right? So let's say after 10 years, this person retires, he has $841,000 of lifetime income benefit, and roughly, even if the money runs out, he'll get about $56,000 on a yearly basis as a guaranteed income. So this is one product that we can discuss one-on-one, and where this, it's called fixed index annuity with Nationwide. The company that says Nationwide is on your side, right? So they offer this product. We can discuss more in detail, right? And yeah.
Great. So what questions do people have? I'm curious, was this helpful? Like thumbs up, thumbs down?
Yeah, very helpful. I had one question. I forgot to put my hand up, but so if I understood it correctly, it's basically stock market dependent, right?
So here's the thing that's cool about IUL. The upside is stock market dependent. There is a limit to how much you can earn per year. It's 13%, but you earn more if the stock indices do better. But it's globally diversified, so it's the S&P 500, the Euro Stocks 50, and the Hang Seng Index in Europe, in Asia. And so you're taking all three of those indices in a combination. I can explain the combination if you want the details, but basically, the upside can go up to 13% per year. But even if all the indices crash, you don't lose anything. When you invest in the stock market, if everything crashes, you lose everything. You know, you might cut your assets in half. With IUL, it never goes down. And so let's suppose, let's take a worst case scenario, 2008, and say you had $100,000 and you put, you know, that $100,000 in, like I said, on January 1st, you took $100,000 loan out. Well, you need to have enough money in the IUL that, and with your income, that you can keep paying for the IUL as you need to, if you don't have the money at the end of the year to pay it back, because some years you may not. In 2008, your $100,000 would have gone down to like $45,000. So what you need to do then is you wait it out. You keep that money in the S&P 500 until it's greater than the loan that you have in the IUL. And then once it goes back, which took 2 or 3 years, it didn't take that long in 2008, even though that was the biggest financial crisis of recent history, you know, since the Depression, really. But after 2 or 3 years, the stock market was back, and then you pay off the loan and you keep going.
So what happens if you don't pay the loan for 2 years?
You don't. It doesn't matter. The only thing that happens, like, if you don't pay the loan before you die, then the people you pass the money on to don't get the money that you borrowed. So,
I see.
But they also don't get the interest on the money you borrowed. But as long as you pay it before you die, it's fine. There's no limit to when you can pay it back.
So basically, let's say you put $200,000 in an IUL. They invest in the stock market. You're guaranteed not to lose up 7.5%. You said, like, it can't go below 7.5.
Yep. So, for example, the product that he's talking about, Carl, is called Transamerica, right? The reason we recommend is they have over 400 billion in revenue generating investments, and is the #1 selling IUL for 11 consecutive quarters. And you know, AM, A Best, Moody's A1, S&P Global A+, right? So the growth is 13%. The minimum, let's say, the price is by -10, -20, like it's happening today, or the day before, yesterday, right? You'll get 0.75 minimum, right? There's like, in your scenario, $200,000, you'll still get 0.75% return. It won't go below, and then it's all the money is tax-free growth, tax-free access at any age using the loan. Because what happens after, let's say, you know, you want to use the money, they charge you 2%, and then they credit you 2% as well, right? And then gives you a living benefit, right? So, for example, if you look at it, right, you know, 20 years back, right, S&P, this is where your money is going into in the IUL, S&P 500, Euro Stock, Hang Seng. So on this side, let's say somebody invests $10,000, right, in the IUL and in, right. So see what Garrett was saying, that the market dropped by roughly these indices by 40%. So if you had $10,000, you know, in 2017 you had $16,000, but it dropped to $9,500, right? But what happened in the IUL? Your money got lost. You still got 0.75. So you didn't lose value, even though there's a cap. You know, in 2007, so you have $15,239, right? Less than the because there's no cap, right? But over here, you know, if you look at like from 2004 to 23, what happened was in the market, your $10,000 would be worth around $28,000, right? In the IUL strategy, it'd be about $40,000.
Yeah. Thank you for that chart. That actually makes everything clear. You're basically saying there's a 0.75% bottom, there's a 13 top, no matter what happens in the stock market.
Yep. So, and all these, you know, let me show you one more thing, and the annuities that we so. In the banks, average return is 1 to 3%, right? So if somebody saves $100,000, they get 1% return. It's 1 on 1 in the year 2. So in variable like a 401k or stock market, if you invest $100,000, you get 10% return. When you'll have 110, right? But in the year 2, market drops hypothetically by minus 10%, you'll get $99,000, right? So, and insurance is called fixed index accounts, right? So what happens in these accounts, there's index, safety, and growth, right? So you get the $100,000 plus 10%, 110, just like the stock market. But now if the market dips in these, this is index accounts, right? Annuities that I was showing you, like the nationwide, right? So you get 0% return, but your money's locked at $110,000, right? So you still get 110. And there's this company, if you were looking for more of a investment return, they give you 11 to 12% bonus, whatever you put in. For example, this scenario, there's no cap, but there's a 0% flow guarantee, right? For example, if somebody invests $500,000, year 1, they'll get 11% bonus. So basically $555,000. Let's say hypothetically, the return is in next 10 years is about 10.37%. Their $500,000 will be worth close to $1.5 million, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that, and in this scenario, in these indexes, right? How, like, I know Charles mentioned FDIC insured. So in banks, it's up to $250,000, right? But when we talk about insurance, you can look it up. It's called state warranty associations, which Garrett covered as well. Your investments or your insurance is safe up to $500,000.
How much?
So you get more, 500,000.
500,000. Okay.
Yeah.
So
The
it's
other
a lot
thing-
better than.
Go ahead. So the other thing, Jagbir, we're getting a lot of questions about people outside of the US. I believe, and Jagbir, tell me if I'm wrong about that. I believe if you're outside the US, but you have a family member that's in the US, the family member in the US can buy the policy if it's someone that you know and trust, and then can transfer it to someone that's outside the US. Is that true or no?
No, so let me just make that clear. Let's say if I have connections in the USA, or even if I come on a tourist visa, or I have a family member here, and I visit the US, I can get the IUL on my name as well. Let's say I live in Canada, but I travel to USA a lot. I can get the IUL or any other country, whether it's
So theoretically, even if someone's just here on vacation, they could get it.
Right.
Yeah.
So actually,
Kind of like when you go to Mexico
to
to
be
get
honest, to be honest,
prescriptions.
guys, if I was not from the US, I would just take a vacation to the US just to get this darn thing, because it's
But
worth
there
it.
gotta be some link here, like maybe they have a child coming to study here or something like
Got
that,
it.
right?
Okay.
Some type of link.
So you need to have some friends, family members, etc. So make some US based friends.
Just tell him you're a friend of Garrett.
Exactly. Hang out with me, become a member of the FTI. You'll have US based friends. Great. We
There
have
you
a
go.
hand up. Thank you, Andy. We love hands.
So any other questions, guys?
Andy has his hand up. So I want to, you're on mute, Andy.
Yeah, I got it. So I just wanted to make a quick comment. So I just saw quickly the graph that went down, or not a graph, it was a table that went down where it showed the S&P 500 with it looked like a 5-point something return over 10 or 15 years, as opposed to the UIC, which had a higher return over that same period.
You can cherry pick periods, but if you look at the S&P since it was formed in the 1950s, the average after dividend reinvestment is 11%. You can ask ChatGPT that.
Right. So that's quite a bit higher. That's quite a bit higher than the 5%. But in spite of that, value does better than growth in long term, and the biggest members of the S&P are growth. So value tends to do better over a long period of time, and small cap does better than large cap over a large period of time, generally speaking. So if you diversify in terms of capitalization and things like that, you're going to get a much different result. I just wanted to throw that out because we're specifying the S&P, which is what we call the market.
That's
But
just what
if
I
you take-
use. I'm not saying you need to,
Right.
you can do whatever you want. Like I named the S&P, the Russell's 2000 as the things that I considered, the Dow
Right.
Jones, and you can choose whatever you want, like
Mhm.
how you invest it is up to you. As long as you have something with a good return on investment. I'm going to look up the annual ROI of the Russell 2000.
Yeah, or the
To add
Russell
to that,
3000.
3000. Okay.
Andy, to add to that, it's not typically S&P. Like, what if you see the screen again? It's S&P
Yeah.
5. If you're using the same strategy without the floor and the cap concept, that's what I was trying to say. S&P 500, Euro Stock, Hang Seng.
Uh-huh.
If there's more floor and cap concept, all those three, right?
Right.
So your
right.
average is 5.40, right?
Right.
But
We also got
when
the
you have-
2008 crash, and then
Yeah.
again. So I mean, we had some specific things in this period of time that were in a longer term period. It would have been a little different. I just wanted to bring that out because personally, I like to have basically 10 indexed ETFs over large cap, small cap value,
Sure.
blend, and then European and stuff like that, and to use that as my base.
Yeah, and that, like how you invest the money is totally up to you. I'm not telling anyone, I'm not
I
giving
get it.
advice. I'm just saying what I do. I did
Right.
look up the Russell 3000. Since its formation in 1984, the average return on investment was 11%. So I'm curious where you got the idea that, value versus, oh shoot, like where you got the
Growth.
idea that one outperforms the other.
Right. So I think if we look at it in a longer period, I mean, the Russell 3000, we can find value and growth outside of these indexes. These indexes were built at certain times for certain
Right.
things, but we can take it back further. And that's, I don't have figures in front of me, but what I've seen is that value tends to do better in the long term than growth. Growth is one of these things that it has to keep going and going and going, and the minute it stops, boom, it drops. Whereas value tends to like stay fairly steady, slow uprise, and then big jumps up.
Yeah, I would say where to invest your money is sort of like which religion to choose. Like everyone's going to have a different opinion, and I don't know that there's a right or a wrong answer, but we each
No,
have
I
to
agree.
try to. What's that? Yeah, and all
I
I would
agree.
say is like, for me, like when I invest in specific indices, I'm also invested in high dividend or increasing dividend stocks because those are the stocks that are making enough money that they can pay some of their money to the shareholders. And the dividend is
Right.
cash. And when I reinvest that dividend, it goes right back into the stock. So that's actually been my best investment so far is I
Right.
think it was either increasing dividend or high dividend.
Right. But and that tends to be value stocks that give dividends.
Got it. Cool. So Carl, go ahead.
Would you have to pay taxes every year on dividends?
I don't know if you reinvest them, if you have to pay tax. I'm gonna look that up.
Okay.
Okay.
I think you do, but it depends
think
on
you
what kind
do.
of an account you have it in too.
Okay. The question I actually had was, as for someone who's like totally a newbie on finances, can you explain what an annuity is?
Yeah, an annuity is just when you give your money to an insurance company and they invest it for you and they pay you a certain interest based on a certain rubric. So I put half of my retirement into an annuity that I learned about through Jogbeer, and I believe the annuities can be complicated in terms of how they work, but I would say 70 to 80% sure that it will outperform the S&P 500, and I'm waiting
Okay.
till it does for a couple of years before I recommend it to people. And if it is, consistently outperforming the S&P 500, I'm going to tell people they should put their money there instead of where they have it.
Right. So it sounds like they're the same thing as the IUL, isn't it? I mean, they take your money,
No.
they put it in parking, no?
No, because you
And
have to
invest
keep
it?
the money. You have to keep the money in the annuity. So you can't borrow it and then invest it again.
Oh,
So, yeah.
oh, I see. Okay. So the difference then with the IUL is that you can actually borrow against it
Yeah,
and
the
increase
the
your.
annuity,
Okay.
I'm hoping to get 12% return on investment, and in the strategy that I'm using with IUL, I'm getting 8% tax free, and at the same time I'm getting 11% or pre-tax and 9% after tax at the same time
Okay.
as getting 8% tax free on the IUL.
So if the IOL has the advantage, why invest in annuity then?
So the IUL, you have to keep increasing the amount of IUL to keep, the amount of insurance to keep increasing the IUL. Once you get to a certain age, or if you have health problems, you're no longer going to be able to increase your IUL amount. So you may
okay.
not be able to get IUL. Now, at that point, then I might get IUL on my kids or on, my cousin or, like someone else.
Right.
And I could do that, but I wouldn't necessarily be able to do it on myself in
So
that case.
just to add to
Okay.
that, Carl, so we can't roll over 401k or IRA money into IUL. We can only do that into annuities.
I see. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, because I was wondering if there was any advantage. If you had a choice between the IUL and an annuity, it would just choose the IUL then.
Yes. In
Okay.
my opinion, that's what I do. Anytime I can
Okay.
invest in IUL, I'm trying to put as much money into IUL as I can because of
Okay.
the huge ROI. Like it's
Right.
ridiculous ROI. I mean, you
Okay.
literally with the return on investment I'm getting, I will double my money every 4.3 to 4.5 years
Even though the cap is 13%.
because I'm earning on the stock side as well.
Okay. Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah, I'm talking about the overall return on investment.
Oh, right. You're borrowing and then you're investing individually outside the IUL into stocks
Exactly. And I'm
through the
earning interest
Vanguard
on both
ETF.
sides.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. So
Got
with that, when it all works and the market's going up and I don't have to wait 3 years,
Right.
and like I'm doubling my money every 4.5 years. That's why you can be worth $200 million when you're a minimum. Like think about this, like a minimum wage worker getting 4% salary increases worth 200 million when they died. Like
Right.
you're
Yeah,
talking
no, it's
about a
amazing. Yeah.
bigger return on investment than Warren Buffett gets.
Right.
So like this is a big deal.
So if the stock market does terrible, like let's say it's 2008, your individual stock ETFs are going way down, right? You lose
Right.
money
And so you
there.
have to wait
Okay.
until the stock market recovers to pay back your loan, but it's okay
Right.
because it was still earning interest all that time. So the IUL will wait for you.
Okay. And there are no penalties to not
Okay.
paying your loan that year, I
What's
guess.
that?
There are no penalties from the
No
IUL.
No penalties. And there's
Okay.
there's no rush to repay it. You can repay it whenever you want. Jogbeer, I don't remember if you answered my question, but if I paid back, let's say I have $100,000 IUL loan, if I pay back $20,000, do I earn the interest on that 20,000 or do I have to pay back the whole loan?
No, you get the interest on whatever you pay back.
So as long as you pay back part of the loan, you earn the interest on that part that you paid back. So that's super cool, right? Like
That
then
is, yeah.
pay back what you can, you'll keep earning interest. And then when you earn that interest, you can pay back more.
So it's almost like a hedge thing, because let's say the stock market does 50%, hypothetically, you get your cap with 30% on the IUL, but you get your 50% from the stock market. Right? Okay.
Yeah. And
All right.
this is like, a lot of people say put your money when you're older into bonds. But bonds right now, good bonds, like I have friends that are really good at finance, but their bonds are under 6%. Whereas the IUL, it's like 8% on average. So why would I not
Yeah.
rather have that money in IUL? And I don't even have to tie the money up in IUL, right? Like I can like put it in IUL and I can also put it somewhere else. But if you want it to be safely available in IUL, you're still earning
Right.
8%. And with a bond, like I mean it is liquid, but and then you have like CDs, but you can't get the money out with a CD. And so your money's
Right.
stuck there and you're still not getting 8% with a CD. So but anyway, let's
But
get to more
okay.
questions.
Yeah.
Neil, go ahead.
Yeah, so it sounds to me, if I understand this, is you're kind of earning money twice, right? Because
Yes,
you're
that's
earning money
exactly
on an
right.
IUL, you're taking money out of that while still earning it, and then putting it somewhere else to invest, which is independent of the first place you got it from. So
Exactly
you're
right.
earning your money twice. It kind of reminds me about what I learned about an HSA. I don't know if a lot of you are familiar with HSAs. If you try to compare an HSA with an IRA or a Roth IRA, with the Roth IRA, you're only you're only having the tax deferred. With the Roth, you're paying the tax up front. Well, with an HSA, you're not paying tax up front with an HSA. You're not paying tax when you take it out of the HSA, and you're not paying tax on your gains of your investment. So the HSA, although you have a cap on the maximum you can do, it's tax-free going in, tax-free coming out. And if you invest and you gain a lot in the investment, it's tax-free on the gain. So I don't know, if you have the ability to do an HSA from a tax point of view, it seems like a good deal. But anyway, I found it interesting what you're saying.
Yeah, HSAs are great for money that you can't put into an IUL, but I think the amount of return on investment you get for an IUL out trumps the tax savings of the HSA. And you also have to remember that the HSA, I believe, is only usable for health expenses.
Until you get older, I think there might be exceptions.
Oh, let me look that up. I was unaware of that if it's true.
When you're working age, yes, you can only use it for health expenses. But I think when you're older, I think there's an exception where you can take it out.
What's an HSA?
Healthcare savings account.
And what is that?
Well, in a simple sense, it's money you set aside in case you need to pay for healthcare. And when you get sick and something's not covered by insurance, you take the money out of the HSA and you pay for healthcare. That in a nutshell, that's really what it is. But what I'm describing is, assuming you're a healthy person and you just want to use it for investments, you put the money into an HSA, you invest it in mutual funds to make gains, so that you gain over time. And then as you're old, over 65, and you want to take it out for retirement costs, unlike these other investments where you have to pay tax either upfront or when you take it out with an HSA, not only are you not paying tax in and out, but you're not paying tax on the gains.
So if you use the HSA after 65 for, sorry, I have to be quiet because my family's home. If you use it after age 65 for non-medical expenses, you are still subject to income tax when you withdraw it.
Gotcha.
The other thing is you're only earning the interest on the money in the HSA in one place. And I think earning interest in two places at a similar interest rate, and with the IUL, you're earning interest at a very similar rate between the IUL and whatever else you invest in. The HSA, you're earning the whatever else you invest in. And so what I like to explain to people is, tell me how you invest your money. Tell me what percent you get. If I could get you 8% tax-free higher, would you like that? And that's essentially what IUL does.
I understand what you're saying. It's a good argument.
Yeah.
And someone mentioned in the chat that there's a limit to the HSA, like a low limit.
There is an upper limit. So it's only good for a certain amount, and then you put your money elsewhere after that. But for up to that amount, there's no. I originally thought there's no reason not to do it, but now with what Garrett's saying, maybe there is an argument to do it.
Yeah.
Andy, go ahead.
Right. So I just had a question about annuities, for instance. If I understand correctly, if I put in $100,000 into an annuity, that $100,000 is theirs. It never comes back to me. Is that correct?
No, not quite. So there are different types of annuities. They're fairly complicated, but they're understandable with having either Jagvir or I explain them to you. Different ones have different qualities. The one that Jagvir was mentioning, they're sort of they're like is talking about a lifetime annuity where you get paid out a lifetime benefit. And in that case, if you have a lifetime annuity, it increases in value over 10 years, and you're basically getting a guaranteed like 2.7 increase in value over 10 years. And then you're getting 5 to 6% usually. You can look up with an annuity calculator depending on your age, how much money you would get out. Once you start taking the lifetime annuity, then you're right, because you're already onto the lifetime annuity, and at that point they're pricing everything out that they have to pay you for the rest of your life. So you can't start taking the lifetime annuity and then get the cash value. But before you start taking the lifetime annuity, you can surrender that annuity, and there's a cash value to the annuity. So after the 10 years of growth, you don't get the 2.7 times guaranteed increase, but you will have an increase in the cash value of the annuity if you surrender it.
Right.
You can surrender to get cash back.
How does that react to the was it the ILU, is it, or IUL?
I think the
how's-
IUL is generally going to have a better return on investment than the annuity.
Yes,
The
it
annuity is
seems like it, but
good.
I mean, is the
Yeah.
principal locked or not?
So there are different types of annuities. In a fixed annuity, which is what I generally like talk to people about, the value doesn't go down in the annuity.
Right, but I'm talking about the IUL.
Oh,
Is does the principal come back to you at that point or not?
oh yeah, there in the IUL, the principal like okay, when you pay, let's say you pay $5,000 of IUL in a month, there might be $1,000 that goes to paying the IUL, $4,000
Right.
goes to the cash value, the $1,000 that goes to paying the insurance and the expenses, etc. You don't get back. And I'm just making up the numbers. It's not exactly
Right.
the split, but
That's fine.
something like that. And you don't get the money that goes to paying the insurance back because you're buying the insurance product. The $4,000 of cash value is always yours, and if you surrender the policy, you get that cash back.
All right, that's a good thing. I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah. Now, I don't ever recommend doing that because you'll make such a higher return on investment just borrowing the money and investing in wherever you want to put the money. Once my wife and I get to be 70 or so, we'll have enough money to buy an apartment complex, and then we could buy we could get rental income from an apartment complex, and we use all that. Like if we buy the apartment complex in cash, say we want to invest in real estate, then we use the rental income from the apartment complex to pay back the IUL. And then as we pay back the IUL, we're earning all the interest from the money that we borrowed. So instead of paying the bank a mortgage, we actually pay ourselves interest. The insurance company is paying us interest for borrowing our own money. Jenny, go ahead.
Are these investment strategies really for people, younger people? Like for somebody who's over 65, it doesn't really make sense to invest this way. I don't.
So if you're over 65, you probably aren't going to want to get the insurance for yourself. So because it's very expensive by the time you're over 65. If you're over 65 and you have a family member with a young child, like I plan to get, once we're in the right spot to do it, I plan to get policies for both of my kids. And if I get policies for both of my kids, the cash value of their policy when they're 80 is going to be like $44 million. And that doesn't even include the increase in, and that's with a 7% return on investment every year, which is the most that we can run scenarios showing a return on investment. I give an example for myself of if it's the average 8%, but when we run scenarios for people, we're only allowed to give up to 7%. And so, they would be, they would have $44 million of cash value. And so when I pass away, my kids will take over the payments on those IULs. And before that happens, I'll teach them how to use it to get this great return on investment. And then, my kids will be doing the strategy that I just described to you. And, they're basically, when they're 40, they're not going to have to work, and that would be a pretty nice gift to give my kids, the gift of financial independence. And, I'm going to teach them to use their time and resources to do good in the world at that point. And I hope they'll join the Free Thinker Institute and, focus their time and effort and attention on making the world a better place. But, they'll ultimately have to decide for themselves what they want to do. But I can try to give them what I think is good advice, and then they can use their critical thinking skills to decide what's good advice for them.
Okay, my next question, real quick, would be: would you consider having a meeting like this one more time? I certainly would like for my son to kind of join in and just. Oh, actually, no. With the YouTube that you're going to
We'll put it up on
of the
YouTube, and
entire.
I'm happy, Jenny, to meet with him like one-on-one as well, so I can explain this stuff. I would love for him to watch the YouTube video first, but I'm happy to meet with him
Okay.
after that, one-on-one to just explain stuff to him.
Okay, so that just so to look up the YouTube, we can just look up, just type in FTI latest video on financial investment, blah, 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 or something like that.
I don't even know what the name's going to be because we use AI to come up with all the names for the the titles and stuff. So I can't tell you what the name will be, but
We'll find it.
Yeah,
So,
if you can't find it, Jenny, just write me and I'll get it for you.
okay, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
All right.
What other questions do people have? We're almost at 9 o'clock.
Oh, I had one. You mentioned like the hypothetical example of 4,000 and 1,000. I'm assuming like just like with brokerage accounts, there's expenses. Is that what you were talking about? What are the expenses for your IULs?
So the expenses is the cost of the insurance, and then there are administrative expenses and stuff like that. That's kind of the overhead. That's what I was saying is after you invest the maximum amount of cash value for 1 year, the insurance of that cash value, from what I can tell, pretty much pays for the expenses for the insurance.
So can you give just an example of what the expenses are? Like if somebody hypothetically put in $2,000 for the first year, is there like a 1% or?
That's on the case by case scenario, and we can discuss that. You know, when we
Okay.
Garrett go to 101, and then we can take it from there.
Okay. Sounds good. Thank you.
Great. And someone just asked me how to make an appointment. I actually should create a specific calendar link for that, which I have not done, but I will do that here. So let's take another couple of questions and I'll make a calendar link that people can use to plan with me. Oh no, I do have one.
While you do that, I have a question for Jagvir. Just out of curiosity, not to do with AULs, but when your money is above 250,000, and so you get kind of nervous about FDICs, and rather than putting money in different banks, I heard that there's a certain network of banks that actually insure your money above 250,000. Have you heard of that, Jagvir?
I mean, no, I have not. Being honest
Okay.
with you, because I know FDIC is only $250,000 unless the banks have their own way of scaling away.
Yeah, I
But
heard that there's certain banks that belong to a special network. I forget the name of it, but they insure up to like millions. So I was kind of wondering about that. But I could find out. I just thought maybe you knew about it.
yeah. So and then also Charles, you have a question? Yeah, we can. There's still other strategies that we can work with IUL with different companies, not the companies that we just mentioned, where we can see if we can qualify for IUL. So if not, just set up some time with Garrett and myself, and we can go over that with you. Just use
Okay.
that calendar link that he pasted. I hope I answered your questions, Charles.
And Kenneth asked when IUL started. I believe it was the 1980s and 90s was the origins, like the actual like start date for IUL itself. The name IUL was like 1997, but it was the 1980s and 90s. It was sort of starting to evolve in its proto forms, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, so yeah, so it's from late 90s, right? I think around 97, 98, something. That's where first IUL policy came. Before that, there's a lot of it used to be called the universal life, and so a lot of information on the internet is about universal life, where the market goes up, you make money, but if the market dips, you also lose money. So it's just like it's a variable account.
By the way,
So IUL,
you can use
IUL
IUL to pay off your mortgage much quicker, because like as your cash value, like if you buy a $500,000 home, you can after 5 years or something like that, you'll have, you say you get $100,000 cash value, then you put the down payment down, you buy a $500,000 home. After a couple of years, you'll have $400,000 cash value. you can pay off the entire mortgage, and then you can use that mortgage payment money to pay back the loan to the IUL. But I actually don't recommend that, because mortgages are very cheap money, and you're going to actually make more money using the strategy that I just said. Even though it feels nice to pay off your mortgage, you're actually going to make much more money by using the strategy that I'm using, because you're getting a much bigger return on investment than the money you're saving by paying down the mortgage. Because you're saving basically whatever your mortgage value is, 4 or 5, maybe 6% in mortgage interest, but you're making, 11% pre-tax and 9% post-tax in the S&P 500. So, hey,
Right.
I'll borrow money at 5% and get paid at 9% all day since Sunday. All right, well, I think we're right about at the end, and it looks like we've answered everybody's questions. If anyone has more, feel free to raise your hand. But really glad that this was helpful for people. Please do feel free to book with me. I love talking about this stuff. I am a personal finance geek, have been for a long time. I keep optimizing strategies, and Jagvir has helped me raise my level to a whole new level, sort of building on the foundation of personal finance that I had built before. But once I learned about IUL, it just opened up this world for this strategy that I'm using now that I'm just really excited about. So yeah, hope that I can be helpful to y'all.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. Thanks a lot,
Thank
everyone.
you so
Hope you all
much. Thank you very much, Eric.
Yeah, thank you
Thank
all.
you, Gary.
Great to
Thank
see you
you.
all. The guests make the party. So thanks everyone for coming, and hope you all have a great rest of your night.
Have a good
Take
night.
care. See you next week.
All right, bye-bye.